Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Why Bother with your host, John Szablewski, the podcast that didn't need to be made by the host who really didn't want to make it. Today, I am joined by Robert Ottone. He just published a new horror anthology, Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares. It's available wherever books are sold, and I'm really excited to talk with this gentleman on air because in our pre-interview, I'm already interested on how funny he is and how much insight he's brought to the table. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my guest, Robert Ottone. Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Hello, how are you, sir?
Oh, I am great. Happy to be here on this blistery January evening.
Yeah,
I, I I can't believe that it's like just a week ago we were experiencing mid 30s, maybe low 40s, and now it's like 22 degrees and we're dying. Like that's it.
it's the only time I'm thankful to be wearing a mask in the classroom is how cold it is out. It's my face stays nice and warm at least.
Oh yeah, and you know what? I don't have to shave wearing my mask. My coffee breath only affects me. I don't have to worry about it.
What do you do? What do you put in your coffee? That's a question.
Well, that's a proprietary blend of just hopes and dreams, and
Excuse me.
and the tears of children. That's what goes in there. So, Rob, before we get too far into this, what do you teach?
I teach English, and I teach English as a new language as well.
Oh, very cool. So, are you a secondary, elementary?
Secondary, and actually, I work predominantly with adults.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. That's an interesting range of ages. Awesome. So English and English as a second language. I'm told by my students that are ENL students that English can be a very they tell me it's not that difficult for them, but I have a feeling that it's a little more challenging than they really want to tell me. Do you find that that is one of those things that it's like, wow, that's awesome that somebody comes here and just picks it up, or how does that usually go for you?
It kind of goes both ways, right? So, like, I have predominantly my district is we have a large Asian population.
Hmm.
So, for our Asian students, specifically in our case, Chinese and Korean more so than Japanese,
Hmm.
they have a tremendously difficult time learning English. Our students who are Latinx, because it's it shares Latin as a root. It's a little easier for them, but they're able to sort of they have a hard time with the H sound.
Hmm.
Like there's the H sound is particularly difficult, and also there's some other soft palate differences with the morphology of the English language compared to a lot of home languages
Hmm.
that very very difficult. But at the same time, I noticed that our Korean students actually pick up English a little faster in terms of our Asian population as a whole, because Korea has a large influx of American cinema,
Hmm.
and they connect to it right away, and they
Oh,
they they sort of assimilate their language with ours a little bit easier than our Chinese population. But I'm so proud of my students every single day. They
mhm.
blow my mind. They work so hard. They're beautiful people, and it's just a privilege to be amongst them.
That's fantastic. Now, do your students know that you're an author?
They do, and quite a few of them have bought my book. And none of them, because well, most of my students are online, but a couple of them have brought it in for me to sign, which is like the cutest thing ever.
Uh-huh.
And I'm always happy to do it. And I'm just like, one of them actually emailed me yesterday. He actually, I'm very proud of him. His name is David. His American name is David. He just went from our high level ENL class to our pre high school equivalency exam
Mhm.
class, which is a big deal. You know, that's
Mhm.
that's the goal for a lot of our ENL adults, is to be able to take part in the American dream, right? To
Mhm.
be able to vote and participate and stuff like that. So, and that this is the path to that. He emailed me the other day. He's like, "I'm reading your book. I'm sorry it's taking me so long, but there's a lot of words in there that I'm having a hard time with." And I was like, "Hey, just whatever you need to do, man, like read it at your own pace. Like don't rush through it, whatever it takes. And if I can help you, I will.
That's awesome. I think that students really love when their teachers are doing something that I mean, what? How many kids can say, "Hey, my teacher's an author, and I can actually buy their book, and it's not a textbook."
I wish it was a textbook. You know how
Right?
much money we'd be making right now?
And you know what? Maybe I'll have a revised edition next year.
Oh, yes, and make all my students buy it. Oh, love it.
Oh, we could dream. So Rob, let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning. How did we get here? How did you first discover that you enjoyed writing, and what does writing mean to your life?
Wow. Writing to me is what I want more than anything. It's I love teaching. That's a good job, but my dream and my love is writing.
Mhm.
And it always has been, and I buried it for a long time. And I was a journalist, I was a copywriter, I was a social media strategist. None of those things delivered on the creativity front. Um, they were cool, they paid the bills, but they weren't fulfilling. Teaching is fulfilling in a sense, but writing is the ultimate in fulfilling.
Mhm.
And telling stories and crafting narrative and giving everybody something from deeper within me than just talking or just telling a joke or just being silly, giving them something that really stays with them.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting too. I hear a lot of teachers that have like these side things that they like to do, and they say that they're able to do that because they're a teacher, because that career, it's a very demanding career this year in particular, but it also gives you that time to be able to work on those passion projects and move forward. Now you brought up copywriting. I actually was a copywriter too, years ago, and I had to agree with you. I thought going in, you're going to be writing the greatest ads for like Geico. And you turn out to write like, the copy that is under like in the fine print about like, like
Yep.
uh, uh, all ages are required, no purchase necessary, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, this isn't fun.
No, not in any way. I could tell you just a quick story thinking about copy, right? Like I worked for let's just call them a very prominent protein bar company that's
Hmm.
based on Long Island. Okay.
Okay.
I worked for them. I wrote copy for them. And we were tasked with pitching a commercial to our higher ups that had something to do with their new branding. When they presented the new branding to us, my immediate thought was they're going to get sued because that branding's already owned by somebody. That was the first thing I said in the meeting. I was like, you might want to consider changing that. They didn't. We came up with a commercial idea. They filmed the commercial idea. The commercial aired once on YouTube. That other company sued the company that I worked for and never saw the light of day, other
Well,
than that one time on YouTube.
now, before they got sued, did they at least get like 100 views, or was it like just done?
No, it literally it dropped, and no exaggeration, it dropped like in the afternoon. And by
Yeah.
the time I left work that day at like 6 o'clock, the cease and desist had already been filed.
Oh my goodness, that is crazy. Yeah, the copywriting world is not the writing that most people think, and I think it's interesting too, because as somebody that's a writer, myself included, I was like, hey, this is an opportunity to really hone my craft, but it's not. It's not, because you don't really have the creative say in a lot of what you're doing. It's a team of people, and you're just using like a couple words to make it happen.
Yeah.
So then writing is such a big part of your life. When did horror writing when did you find that, and when did you say, I want to explore this as my type of work?
I had written a few horror screenplays when I was in college, and one of them I adapted into a stage play that I saw as like, oh, this is like a Twilight Zone kind of thing. It's just a short 3-act play, feels like a Twilight Zone episode to me. And we turned it into a stage piece from a screenplay that I had written, and it got performed in LA. it got performed in Alaska, which I 1000% did not go to because that's like a 12-hour flight, which I am not doing. And then it got workshopped in the city here in New York City, and then it got performed at my alma mater here on Long Island, which is not in existence anymore. So that was kind of like the beginning where I started like playing with horror. That was my first experience with that. And then from there, I wrote a screenplay that got me a screenwriting fellowship for a year and a half, which was a lot of fun. And at that time, everything that I wrote was horror. And the company that gave the fellowship does not make horror anything. So while they looked at the stuff and they liked it, they never produced anything because that's not what they do.
Sure.
And just had, that was a good experience. And then I've always loved horror. I haven't always read horror. That's kind of the weird thing. Like I didn't grow up reading Stephen King or anything. My mom read everything by Stephen King. I took her to meet Stephen King, and he is like the cutest, sweetest guy that you'll ever meet. He's also enormous, but he's just so tall. But like, I didn't grow up reading. I only read my first Stephen King book last year, my first fiction Stephen King book. So but then I started, when my dad passed away in 2019, I started putting a lot of my feelings and emotions and stuff into story concepts and ideas and emotion and feeling, and I put all of those into different little stories, and they all had a horror tinge to them. Horror was like one of his favorite movie genres, probably his favorite, definitely my favorite at this point. And I just put everything into that, and that was my first collection. That's kind of, I just got a really lovely review on my first collection today, which was really nice. A booktuber that I really like did it, and I thought that was really cute. But like, it's nice to see that it's still like resonating with people because of the emotion and because of like me pouring therapeutically all of my feelings about losing my dad into it. That was a nice cathartic experience, as awful as it was to lose my dad, and it still is awful to have lost my dad.
Sure.
The process of exercising those demons through writing, horror writing specifically, was very comforting in some ways.
Definitely. And and anytime there's a loss, it's always good to be able to find an outlet that you're able to help cope with that. And that's awesome that you were able to not only create, but you were also able to do that almost in your father's memory in that case. Now, when you talk about horror, it's my understanding that there's kind of like different subgenres of horror. Like we have psychological thriller that is like a Rod Serling Twilight Zone type of deal, and then we have like let's kill everybody and have as much blood as we possibly can in a given time. What would you say is your favorite side of that? Is there a gory side, or is it a let's just mess with your mind until you can't take it anymore?
I like messing with your mind probably more than anything. There's nothing I love more than sowing the seeds of distrust and really setting people against each other in a story. For example, in the new collection, which I just so happen to have a copy of right here, everybody. Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares. There's a story in there called Elevator of the Dead that there's actually, if you just put that in your podcast finder or whatever, if you just type that, there's a wonderful episode of a show called, oh my God, how do I not remember the name of it? I'm a monster. But they do, The Night's End podcast. They do a beautiful audio version of that story. And it's just all about tensions between people stuck in an elevator during the zombie apocalypse. So while I have a little bit of both things, I'm not really a gore guy. That's not really my thing. My fiance is a gore chick, which is great. Love it. But that's not really for me. Like, I kind of lean a little more towards into like the 70s style of horror. Like I'm one of those people who is like, that's correct, The Exorcist is the scariest movie of all time. Like, I'm one of those. But I when it comes to slashers and stuff like that, like, I think the gorier they get, the sillier they get, unless it's Tom Savini doing the gore, and then of course it's like chef's kiss. But I just I lean a little bit more towards the 70s inspired stuff of like tension and mistrust and is this really happening? Is it not? The Changeling is a good example. The movie The Changeling is if I could ever write something as good as The Changeling, I'll be a very happy boy.
So let's talk about your process a little bit. And I love asking this question because creatives, I'm fascinated by how the process is different for everybody, right? Some people, they can go the Stephen King approach and they can say, I'm writing, I don't know, like 1,000 words a day. And I don't leave my office until I do it. And I don't even care if it's garbage. I'm just doing it. Then there's other people that say, I'm not going to sit down and write every day. I might sit down on a Saturday and crank out 3 hours worth of content and be happy with it. So let's talk a little bit about your process. Maybe do you like write a treatment for what you're going to do? Do you block it out? Do you just say, I'm going to sit down and see what happens? What's your thoughts on that?
That is a great question. I am definitely a plotter. I'm not, I tried pantsing a few times. I pantsed the story that's in the new collection and people seem to really like it, but it gave me so much stress while writing it. I was not vibing with like the whole, I don't understand how people can just sit down and be like, wherever it takes me as it takes me. And it's like, that's not me. But I have about 280 notes in my note app on my phone. I have an iPhone, so like it comes with that or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
I have so many pages of notes of different stories and stuff, and it's all about trying to find the time. Like I teach on Saturdays too, so like I don't even get Saturday mornings to write. I don't get in the morning to write. Like I'm at school all day on Wednesdays. I'm literally at school 13 and a half hours on Wednesday morning until 9:30 at night. So
Wow.
like, yeah, like any little time I have to myself, I try to get a little writing done. I started a new story yesterday, just because I found I had about 30 minutes to kill, and I was able to get about 4 pages done in about a half hour. So I was like, all right, that's productive.
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah.
good about that.
Well, I mean, I always love it because anytime you take a writing class or you sit down and you talk to somebody that's taking a writing class, they're like, well, I read Stephen King's On Writing. And I'm like, that's fantastic. And that works for him. That's great. But people like you and I that have a day job, and we still want to, create. It's hard, so I have to give you great credit where it's due because finding time and being able to say, like, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm going to take this time and use it to my benefit. That's great. That's great. So when do you act? So let's say you finish up a story, your first draft, and then you say, okay, I'm going to set this away for a little while, and then I'm going to come back. Or do you say, you know what, I gotta make this perfect before I can start something else? Or do you have a couple pots boiling at once? How does that work?
Oh, if I have about 30 pots boiling at once. I literally I sold a story last night that I had submitted over almost a year ago, and I had completely forgotten that I had submitted it a year ago. And also, it's absurd that it took a year for these people to like come out. But like, it's just so like I've always got something going on. So typically, when I finish a story, I'll sit back and I'll go, all right, and I let it sit, and then usually I send out my first couple feelers to like I'll send them to Lou, or I'll send them to another writer that I know and be like, hey, do you have a hot second? Can you take a look at this and give me your honest feedback? Once they send me their feedback, I'll make some revisions. I'll look it over. I'll take what they say into consideration. More often than not, they're right. And then I'm actually a part of 3 different writing groups. So if it's my turn coming up, which actually I have a writing group meeting coming up in 2 weeks that I submitted this piece for, not the new thing, but like a relatively new thing. I will wait until I get their feedback in 2 weeks, make those revisions if they are all accurate, if they all line up. And then I'll know, okay, this first like round of edits is done. I'm going to send it out for submission. And then it's on its own. If it gets rejected right away, I know something's really wrong with it, and then I'll make more edits to it.
Sure. So when you get feedback, the film school rule back in film school days was like if you asked, like, let's say 5 people to look at something and 4 of those 5 people said X is not working or something's not working. Chances are it's not working. But if, one person says it, it's something you can look into, but it's not necessarily life-changing, right? So uh, how important is it to find somebody that you trust to look at your work, to give you that honest feedback, and not just stroke your ego to say, hey, that's good. It's terrible. That's good stuff.
It's super important because you want to surround yourself with honest people, because like I found in the horror community specifically, and also in the children's, I wrote a YA novel during coronavirus, while I had coronavirus, by the way.
Yikes.
It was so much fun. It was great. I loved being paralyzed for a night. That was great, because this, coronavirus isn't real, right? Anyway, so sorry, didn't mean to get on a soapbox there. But so I wrote a YA novel, and I met a lot of really amazing, just so gracious, so beautiful, brilliant young adult and children's authors during this process. And the children's author group and the horror writing group, you would think like not simpatico at all, but they are, because their whole thing is the rising tide lifts all boats. That seems to be what it is across the board with those 2 groups. I don't know other writing groups or whatever, but they do want your stuff to be as good as it possibly can be. So I haven't found anybody who's been like, wow, your stuff is so good. Like, you can do no wrong or whatever. Like, I've never found anybody. Like, I've had people be like, this is really bad. I've gone into a writing group meeting with an author that we both know, that we were talking about earlier, where I was like, this story is pretty good. Like, I feel pretty good about this. And all of them ripped it to shreds. And I was like, now I have something to think about. And no joke, I swear to you, it's sitting on my desktop right now with all of their critiques lined up, because they're all very sweet, and they give you the file with their edits in it and your original. I have my original sitting there and have all 4 of their edits next to it. And I'm like, I don't feel up to this right now. And it's been sitting there for over a month.
Nice.
One day I'll get back to it, but that day is not now.
Oh my God. I over the summer, I may or may not have a neighbor that lives on my street that loves to manicure their lawn to the point where it's kind of sickening, that it's like every 2 days, every day, mowing, edging, weed whacking. I'm like, don't you have a life? Can't you do anything else? Like, right. So I decided that I wanted to adapt The Telltale Heart as if it was about this guy that's cutting his lawn. and I was like, I sent it out to a couple of people just, for laughs and giggles. It wasn't right. I wasn't like trying to be serious with that. I was like, what do you think about, what if this happened? Right. And my fiance says, I think I need to be concerned. and I took that as either this is very well written, or I need to go talk to somebody.
Maybe both.
Maybe. Hey, you never know. So
I would love to read that, by the way.
I will. I'll send it to you. So yeah. So it's ridiculous. So instead of the heart, thumping, it's the sound of the lawnmower starting. Like that's awesome. It's ridiculous. But
that's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite pieces to teach. By the way, the Telltale Heart. I love teaching the Telltale Heart. I can tell, just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like sidetrack you, but
please.
I was teaching it. My first teaching job was at a school for special needs children, and these kids were awesome. Like, they were so much fun. Like, they were amazing and so inspiring in so many ways. When we got to, I did like a full October, November spooky fiction time. I'm so hyped about it. And I did the Telltale Heart, and I got so into it. I was like slamming tables, and I was like acting it out. I was going real crazy with it. And they loved it. They were all like, oh, Mr. Oh, yay. And like, they were all clapping. They're so sweet. And the phone rang in the classroom, and I picked it up, and they were like, hi, this is the main office. Is everything okay up there? And I'm like, yeah, everything's great. We're reading Poe. And they're like, okay, bye. It was awesome. So much fun.
I love that story, and you know, it's actually so this year around Halloween I decided I wanted my eighth graders to read that story and then create a book cover based on some of the imagery, and not only was that such a great idea, but it allowed me to get a phone call from their English teacher saying, "I'm teaching the same lesson. We can't do this."
Oh my God.
And I said, "You're doing an art project in English class?" I said, "Huh?"
Why not? So, like, so the obvious move there is to go to the principal and go, hey, we've got interdisciplinary stuff going on right now. Do you want us to teach a professional development course together and
Yeah.
bridging the gap between the core content and the electives? What's up?
Yes. I'm telling you, and it was hilarious. And what you just said didn't happen, but there you go. But I just thought it was so interesting. So then I gave them a different story. I gave them Kurt Vonnegut's Harrison Bergeron because I said,
Oh,
"Hey,
yes.
this is topical." That English teacher calls me back and says, "You know, that's like a high school story."
No, it's
"Okay."
not.
I'm like, and even if it is, none of the kids
Here.
understand it. So it's
Oh,
like,
really? You don't know? I
yeah,
taught that. I taught Harrison Bergeron with my special needs kids, and they
yeah.
were way into it. They loved it.
I told them, I said, you have to look at this with a little bit of a humorous approach because it's like what my favorite part is like there's this part of that story where they talk about the newscaster and there's like they're putting a picture up and
Yeah.
it's raw
And it's upside down. And his mom goes, well, at least he tried.
I'm like, that is perfect.
There's a
You know,
great
like,
there's a great short film adaptation of it. Actually, it's kind of problematic now because Armie Hammer plays
yeah.
Harrison Bergeron, and he just got
Ooh.
canceled. But
Oh yeah, no, yeah,
it's still a good short film. I think it's like called 2132 or something like that. Just check it out.
yeah, definitely, I will. So let's talk about this is always exciting because the publishing world, from what my understanding of it, is definitely the paradigm is shifting. It is like it used to be like you'd query, and you'd find somebody that was interested, and then they would help you. That manager would help you find a publisher, and then if you were lucky, you'd be one of like 2,000 books that were published that year, right? But now
Mm-hmm.
self-publishing is a force to be reckoned with. So let's talk a little bit about your track to publishing, your books, what you believe worked, how you got there, and if there's any advice you might be able to give to aspiring authors.
Yeah. Um, when there's two schools of thought. There's building your audience first is always kind of a good idea, and networking and getting to know people, finding your tribe. That's like the easiest way for me to put this is find your tribe. I was talking with an author who sent me his book to read, and I sent him mine, and we were just going to give each other honest feedback kind of thing. And he has yet to find his tribe really, and I was like, that's the most important thing because the idea is that you support one another, you learn from one another, and you experiment. So like what I've done in terms of marketing with this book, there are absolutely things that I would not do again.
Mhm.
Now, that said, there are a lot of things that I absolutely would do again. They're spending certain amount of money on things to promote. That's not fun to do. Like it's not fun to take a hit of like $1,000 to
Yeah.
run, some sort of marketing campaign. But for the ones that pay off, totally worth it. So like learning that through this second book was valuable. So a lot of it is trial and error. A ton of it is networking and talking to people and like Like, so I'll just be totally candid. Like, when I saw Lou Rera on your
Hmm.
show, I
Hmm.
was like, oh my God, like, I really like the format of this. This is really cool. This is fun. John seems like a cool dude. Lou, I know, is a cool dude. I want to talk to you. So I messaged you like right away and I was like, hey,
Yep.
man, this is really cool what you're doing. And I would love to do this with you. I have a book coming out too. You can't, like, for authors and stuff, you cannot be afraid to put yourself out there,
Mhm.
because the worst thing that could happen is someone says no.
Yeah.
Like, if John said to me, and I'm just, I don't mean to speak like you're not here, but like, if you had said to me, hey man, no thanks, I just had an author on, we're good. I'd be like, okay, and then just keep going. I'd still listen to the show and I'd still watch the show, but you know, so this time around, I felt very lucky to be given certain opportunities to do certain interviews, to be on certain podcasts. I got to be on some podcasts that like were kind of dream podcasts that I got to
Mhm.
be on. I did like a little interview segment for one that I listened to like religiously. Like, that was really cool. So you just have to be open to the experience, and don't think like just because if you self-publish, don't think that just because you put a book out that it's going to get like a lot of traction. Like, there's a lot of marketing and a lot of publicity and stuff that you have to do. And like, I'm just me,
Yep.
and I've done a lot of interviews. I've been very lucky and very blessed, and I can't thank all of the people enough for all the shows that I've done. It's like truly a blessing and like an honor to get to talk about my book for like the past few months. Like, it's exciting. And like, doing that is fun,
Yeah.
and like getting to talk to different people. Like, you have different perspectives and different thoughts and stuff that, like, I did an interview a couple of weeks ago than that guy would have,
Mhm.
than the first person that I did an interview with would have. It's just fun. Like, it's not a scary thing. You're talking about your passion. Like, it has to be fun.
Yes. Yeah.
So I there's a lot of different things. Like, don't skimp on an editor. I'm very lucky that the guy who does the editing for my publishing company, he's like one of my best friends.
Mhm.
So it's easy to and he actually is a publisher for a publishing company here on Long Island.
Mhm.
So it's an easy thing to be like, hey brother, I need a little bit of help here with this. And he gets it done and we go from there. But don't skimp on a cover. That's like a weird thing I keep
Mhm.
seeing, is covers that are not really like, I look at them and I go, I like it, but like, is that gonna stand out
Mhm.
from other covers? Like, if you look at Lou's cover for his book,
Mhm.
whoa.
Yes.
Like Awake, the cover of that is astronomical.
Yeah.
And spoilers, the only other cover that I can think of that looks like that is by Stephen King, because it's the same artist that did the Stephen King cover
Yep.
that did his.
Yep.
So like, that's huge. So
Yeah.
having a cover that looks like that, having a cover that really jumps out, I've gotten a lot of nice feedback on mine. It's very sweet. The weirdest thing about mine, because there's fire, I'm just gonna hold it. I'm not sure, this isn't like, oh, here's a promotion
No.
thing.
No.
Like,
Definitely.
if you look at the fire, right?
Yep.
People have told me from the very beginning that they see faces in
Yeah.
the fire.
Yeah. I can see those.
I
Yeah.
only saw it for the first time. This is no joke. I only saw it for the first time like last week. I saw a face in the fire. It's so weird to me, but like, I love that. So getting
Yeah.
people's feedback like that is nice. Um, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like, my local Barnes and Noble called me
Mhm.
and asked me to come in and sign some copies of my book. Like, they only had it because I guess someone asked for it,
Mhm.
and they saw that I'm from the same area, and
Mhm.
I guess they got my contact info from the publisher, the people who print the book, and they called me.
Mhm.
Like, I never that what am I going to do? Say no? Like, oh, I'm not going to come into your store. Like, that's crazy. Just do it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fun. And also, something I learned, a signed book
Mhm.
is a sold book,
Yes.
because you can't return it.
Nope. You are committed until the end. Oh my.
I try to buy as many signed books as I can.
Yes.
Which is, it's just a way, like, buying from like an indie store. like I said, the Barnes and Noble here, obviously that's like a big chain, but you know what? Like people give big chains a bad rep, but like all of your local Barnes and Nobles truly are like staffed by really passionate,
Hmm.
really cool people.
Yeah.
Like I've had nothing but good experiences going into the Barnes and Noble here, and they literally sent me a message the other day when I got some news about my book, and they were like, "Hey, we're so proud to have your book on our shelves. It really means a lot to us." And I was like, like, I was like, "Whoa."
Oh, I have made it.
It was just really cute. It's very sweet of them.
I think it's funny that you say a signed book is a sold book, because I was just recently watching an interview with Chris Van Allsburg, who did the Polar Express
Yep.
and Jumanji and all that. And he said that when the Polar Express came out, it took a little while for it to like become its big thing. And he said he would go to like these book signings, and he signed like thousands of them. And he said that his publisher told him at one time there were less unsigned copies out there in the world than there were signed copies, because like everybody had a signed copy. And I think about that because I'm like, I've only been to like 2 book signings in my life, and because there's already really been like 2 authors that I would care about, and J.K. Rowling is nowhere near Buffalo, New York. So we're not, like, but it's not that I don't want, I mean, of course, I have Lou's signature on his book, but he just sent that to me. I didn't have to go anywhere. And then I think one of my professors from film school, he wrote a book, and then there was this like book signing, and it was a very nice hope you enjoy. Like it was not even like
How personal of him. How sweet.
I know. Did you even sign that, or was it just like a stamp? And you went, I don't know.
I always wonder about like because people are so cute. Like my mom will tell me like, "Oh, so and so bought your book, and here it is. She wants you to sign it." And I'm always like, "This is for my mom's friend. I have to write something really good in here. What am I gonna write? What? Maybe I'll draw like a jack-o'-lantern or something. Like I don't know. Like I get really stressed
Yeah.
about sometimes. And like there's another writer friend of mine. His name is James Chambers. He knows Lou also.
Uh,
James has a book called On the Night Border, and his signature is sick. So like he signs his thing, but he writes above the title, he writes be careful as you walk along dot 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 on the night border, the title. I was like, oh, that's so good.
it sounds like Don LaFontaine would be like like giving the like, be careful as you walk
In a world on the night border. Yeah. It's so perfect. So like I want to do something like that, and I'm just like I always feel like what am I going to write in this thing? But I usually try, like if I know the person, I try to write something personal in
yeah,
there.
yeah. And that helps. When I brought out my children's book, it came out back in August, and I
Nice.
signed it like always stay creative, or it's an
Oh,
art
see,
book,
that's beautiful.
try to make it fun like that. But
Yeah.
I remember at an old movie theater in Buffalo, they used to have like these signed autographs from movie stars, and it would be like Steve Martin. And he probably had never stepped foot in this place, but he made it out to them, because I have a feeling that like one summer they had an intern, and their person's job was solely to write to these people to see if we could get autographs to put up on the wall. So like, I
That's
remember
awesome.
like Phyllis Diller was like, she she has a signed paper, and I'm like, and the things they would always say is always like, hi there, or stay classy, or you look great, or I think Martin Short wrote, did you lose weight? And it was just like, yeah. And of course the Seinfeld episode where Jerry writes, there's nothing finer than eating in
Than
your
eating in
diner.
your diner. I love when he gets upset and he's like, "No, I don't want that. I'll send you another one. I promise." She's like, "No, I want this one." So
I
awesome.
like it.
Oh, I like it. It's funny. Oh my god, I love that
Uh,
you know Seinfeld. That makes me happy.
Oh, you know what? I am an aficionado, and I've never actually watched the show until recently, since it's on Hulu, in order. And there are some really dark parts of that, like when uh, uh, Elaine is dating Joey, and he's like, creating like this like shrine, and I'm like, what is going? What is
Yeah.
going
When she's like, is that me in the shower? And he's like, yes, I took them with the telephoto lens. It's, it's just crazy Joe Davola.
Yeah, it's like, what? That's just nuts. All right,
I
so
love it.
it's fun. So you brought up a little bit of promotion and marketing, and as a self publisher, you kind of have to do it all. And the good thing is you don't really necessarily have to pay a publicist, right? Because you're doing it, but you also have to do it because it's not a make it and they will come
Yeah.
scenario. And how do you go about printing your book? Is it like print on demand? Is it through KDP? Is it you ship them out to China and then they send them back to you? How do you go about that process?
I use Spooky House Press uses both KDP and we also use Ingram Spark. So
Mhm.
KDP obviously takes care of everything on the Amazon side of things, but Ingram Spark will get us in. We're actually in Sag Harbor Books. It'll get us in Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. So we've been using them for a while. Ingram Spark is really kind of awesome, but they could be a little difficult to deal with if you have a problem.
Mhm.
I know we talked about Lou and I talked a lot about Ingram Spark, and they had some problems on their side of things, but the three times we've used them, they've been solid.
Yeah.
So you can use a lot of different things. There's also, I think, Lulu is another one, but the ones that I've used, like I said, KDP and Ingram Spark, and I've been happy.
Yeah, yeah, the quality through I'm surprised with Amazon, how awesome the quality actually is. They truly do put the effort in. I mean, and there's always authors that are like, "Oh, that's not how I envisioned it." But then I always find that usually when somebody says that's not how they envisioned it, they didn't really understand the process or they didn't set the settings right in the thing. It's like, why is it always somebody else's fault? I don't I
Right.
don't
And that's why you need a good cover artist. That's the
Mhm.
value of a good cover artist, because a good cover artist will be like, your book is not going to fit here.
Mhm.
Which actually happened with a book that we published. We published another author's book that's actually won a couple awards. His name is Michael Jess Alexander, and he's a brilliant, brilliant writer. But we put his book out, his collection, Boarded Windows, Dead Leaves, and when we sent it to the printing, there was some issue with the book is very thin
Mhm.
and the bleed margins for the art didn't work correctly. So we had to redo the cover, which is not a big deal. The cover artist, it literally took him a day,
Yeah.
and re-uploaded it and it was fine. But thankfully, he realized that our cover artist knew the problem, or rather our cover formatter, because we had an artist and then we had a guy to format it. Our formatter was like, I should have caught that. He's like, I'm sorry, or whatever. And I'm like, hey, man, not a big deal. Like, you figured it out in a day. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, yeah.
But, those things happen. And that's why they send you copies of the book. You could buy the practice copies and make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah.
I try to buy a few of those and then get them in the hands of all the parties that need them, and
Yeah,
that's that.
definitely. Awesome. All right, so I got two more things I'd like to talk about. So your book is on the preliminary ballot for the Bram Stoker Award. So let's talk a little bit about that. Now, I actually a few years ago started to read Dracula. I got through maybe 75% of it, and then I said, "Okay," and I never picked it up again. So, if you don't know, he's the gentleman that wrote Dracula. So let's talk a little bit about the excitement with this award, preliminary ballot, what that means,
Hmm.
and what maybe the criteria is to even get that far.
Yeah. So the preliminary ballot of the Bram Stoker Awards, basically they take all of the horror that's been released this year, and they put it in the hands of the public and the members of the Horror Writers Association, which I am an active member of. I'm very proud to be. Um, and basically, they say like, hey, what are some of the things that you think we should be looking at, that our juries should be looking at for the awards this year? And to make the preliminary ballot means that you make the cut of thousands of books released in a year that they deem worthy of looking at. And I'm just like humbled and blown away that I'm on that list. Like, I'm on that list with authors that I love. Like, there's an author on there who I read religiously. His name is John Langan. Like, to be on the preliminary list with someone that I consider a literary hero, like, that's huge to me. And authors like, I'm on the list with Kathy Koja and Lee Murray and just so many amazing artists and writers. Like, I'm just like, how am I here with them? Like, they're the people that I'm like, yeah, I kind of worship the ground they walk on. And I'm lucky to be like in this preliminary group with them. Like, I don't know if I'll make it to the next round, but you know what? Like, I'm really happy that I made it this far. And that means a lot to me. And it means a lot to me to hear like such beautiful feedback from people like John Langan mentioned that my collection was one that he really liked this year. And that was like, it meant a lot to me. I got emotional when I heard that, because it's like, he's one of the people who literally inspired me to do this. And, that's huge to me. Like, other people to read, to get into writing horror, they're like, oh, I read a bunch of Stephen King and Dean Koontz. It's like, well, I read a lot of John Langan and Brian Evanson and James Chambers and Lou Rera. And those are the guys that I want to be.
Yeah.
So, like, getting feedback from them, as much as I love Stephen King, like, don't get me wrong, I read Thinner and I loved it. That's the only one of his I've read, other than On Writing. Like, that's amazing. Like, I love his stuff too. But like, the guys who I legitimately like read their books and devour their stuff, like, their feedback means a lot to me. So to be on that list with like, John Langan and Lee Murray and Kathy Koja and like these other people, it's just like, it's crazy to me.
That's awesome.
It's an honor. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah, so if when you do win this award, because I'm putting that out there. So when you do win this award, what comes with that? Is it bragging rights? Do you get to put a stamp on your book? Like, what does that mean in the Horror Writing Association?
I guess I mean, you get a cool looking statue. I know that there's like an actual award that you get. It's really cool looking. It's to me, I think, if I'm getting it right, it looks like a haunted house. It almost looks like Dracula's castle kind of thing. It's very creepy looking. I love it. It's really cool. It's definitely cooler looking than the Emmy, that's for sure. So you get one of those.
It's a justice now. Fantastic.
So you get a cool statue, and you join a really amazing group of giants whose shoulders you get to stand on. Like, that's really what you get, and it's really a tremendous honor. And there's a lot of good stuff nominated. There's a lot of good stuff out there this year. There's Stephen Graham Jones' The Only Good Indians. I personally think that it's going to be tough to top that. Todd Kiesling got a great book out. There's just a lot of great stuff out, and to see horror having a renaissance like this, and to be like a teeny tiny part of that, is pretty cool. Like, I'm really proud. And like I said, if I don't make it to the final ballot, that's still cool. I didn't think anybody was going to read this book anyway. So, like, nice.
That's awesome. Well, I wish you all the best, because I think anytime that you get to that point where your peers who you admire say, you know what, your work is good, that almost, to me, would say, I've made it. I'm here and I can compete with the big wigs. So that's great. Well, and I wish you all the best. So
Thank you.
I have to ask before I let you go a little bit about meeting Stephen King. You said earlier that you took your mom to meet him. How exactly did that happen? And if you might not even know this. What is your mother's favorite novel of his?
Oh, I think my mom's favorite novel of his is it's gotta be it's either The Stand
Mm-hmm.
or it's either The Stand, or Pet Cemetery.
Oh yeah.
It's gotta be one of those three. But you know what? She really loved The Outsider too. The Outsider really hit her in a way that I haven't seen a book hit her in a while. So like she's still vibing with King, man. Like she reads everything. Still she pre-orders everything. She buys it on Kindle and she buys a physical copy. Like she's hardcore. Like I just get her Amazon gift cards for every event because I know she's going to use them in 2 days. So all right, so it's like it's kind of I don't want to waste your time, but like okay, so it was Mother's Day. Mother's Day was
Okay.
coming up, and it just so happened that Stephen King was going to be sitting down at the Mark Twain Museum in Connecticut and
Mm.
talking about his career and just doing a really wonderful Q&A symposium in fundraising for the Mark Twain Museum, which, by the way, is beautiful. For those, I believe it's in Hartford. It's really amazing. So I was a journalist at the time, and I worked for a pretty hoity-toity magazine on the east end of Long Island, out in the Hampton. And I tried to buy tickets for this thing. Tickets were not available, and they were like $150 a pop, which
Mhm.
is like, yeah, it's not, to meet Stephen King and get the book and get him, that's really not that much money.
Sure.
So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I want to get this for her for Mother's Day. And I talked to my sister. My sister's like, if you can get the tickets, I'll get you guys hotel rooms and in Hartford. Like, you take care of the tickets, I'll take care of that. And I was like, deal. So couldn't get the tickets. Sister booked the hotel rooms rather. And I was like, here we go. I called the Mark Twain Museum and I was like, hi, my name is Robert Ottone. I am a reporter with blank. And I gave them the name. And we really would like to do a piece on Stephen King being at your museum because you're right across the Sound. Technically, it's Long Island-ish. It's close enough. It's a lifestyle thing that we can take part of. And not only did they give us tickets for free, they gave us meet and greet tickets for free,
Wow.
and they put us in the second row of the theater.
Wow.
So I went there. I'm a big cigar guy. So the ticket manager at the place, I talked to him like one other time, and I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna go have a cigar. And he's like, oh, I'm a cigar guy too. So we went. I brought him some Cohibas because, like, how can I not? You're gonna get somebody the Rolls Royce of cigars as a thank you, at least. So I brought him some of those, and Stephen King was doing the meet and greet, and I went ahead of my mom, and she was dressed so cute. Like, she was dressed to the nines. Like, she looked so lovely. She's cute to begin with because she's tiny, but like, so so I go ahead of her and I say to him, we take a picture while we're talking. I look like an idiot. And I say to him, you're her Mother's Day present. She loves everything that you've written. She's read everything that you've written. She worships you. And he was like, oh, wow, that's so sweet. She goes up to him and she's so giddy. And he gives her the biggest hug and holds her for a long time. And he's like 6'5". He's huge and
Wow.
she's tiny. He's holding her and he's like, I've never been anybody's Mother's Day present before. And I took a picture of the two of them. It's like her favorite picture of herself because she's just beaming. And he was just so kind and so nice. So when it
That's
reads King, I'm like, you're an idiot.
that is awesome that you were able to do that because it's anytime you're able to make mom happy, hey, that's a good day, right?
Yep. My feeling was like I got to meet my hero, my
Mhm.
writing hero. She should get to meet hers. So like it was awesome. It was great. Like it could not have been a better experience.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that, and Rob, thank you very much for taking the time today to speak with me. I learned a lot. I really am excited to follow your career as a writer, and I'm looking forward to hearing the good news when you win that award. Again, it's out there. It's out there. They can't take it back. It's that good mojo. But thank you very much for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome. I had a great time.
Great. I'll be back with you in a second. Ladies and gentlemen, today my guest was Robert P. Ottone, and he just released a brand new book called Her Infernal Name and Other Nightmares. It's available wherever books are sold. If you like today's show, why don't you like or subscribe to Why Bother on Facebook and YouTube? And we're now available on all major podcast platforms. My name is John Szablewski, and this has been another episode of Why Bother?